Good afternoon. My name is Regina Carleglio. I'm the Director of Membership at Jewelers of America. And I'd like to thank you for joining us today. Today we have a very special guest, Howard Stone, and he is the VP for Asset Protection at Jewelers Mutual. And today he's going to discuss the challenges our industry is facing from crime and maybe some ideas and opportunities to help mitigate the loss. If you have any questions, just put them into the chat and I'll make sure they get asked. And if for some reason you have any questions after or something you forgot, you could always reach out to us at members@jewelers.org. And I will make sure that it either gets forwarded to Howard or one of us gets back to you with an answer. So I will turn it over to Howard.
Great. Well, thank you. Thanks, Regina. And I appreciate the time and the opportunity to chat with you and certainly your members and talk a little bit about what's happening in the industry as it relates to crime. And if you recall, I think last year, maybe around this time, you and I had an opportunity to speak about crime. And I will tell you that while we've seen a decline year over year in the frequency of events, and we'll talk a little bit about that, but severity continues to increase. Severity meaning when there is a crime, the level of the loss that a jeweler is experiencing. And if you think back to last year, kind of what we dealt with around this time in the summer, late summer into early fall with what we were calling sophisticated burglaries, those unfortunately have not gone away. And we'll talk a little bit about that as well. But we're starting to see some trends in the past couple of months on the coast involving more less sophisticated in terms of technology, but more aggressive types of crimes that are happening with groups that are coming in and burglarizing in broad daylight, the store smash and grabs using vehicles. So I think hopefully through the course of our time together, some questions may come up or we'll have an opportunity to take a little bit of a deeper dive into those. But here at Jewelers Mutual and what we're seeing, like I said, with relation to those, many of those, given good security practices, comprehensive training for frontline staff, strong partnerships with law enforcement, can really be mitigated in many cases. So hopefully as we get through the presentation, we'll be able to leave, or I'll be able to leave some tips and some valuable tools that jewelers can use for their stores, for their employees to learn about these types of crimes that are happening. I'll close before I know that I want to get into the questions because I think that there's a lot of them that were submitted pre-webinar, which I think are important to go through. But really, the big 5 takeaways that we've learned here with our partnership with JSA and internally within Jewelers Mutual for any type of loss that a jeweler may incur is really around, first and foremost, to ensure that you have a strong, robust security plan. And that may include, tabletop exercises that you're doing with your associates, things of that nature. But more importantly, to also make sure that you're constantly assessing those security plans, because what happens is the crime environment can change very quickly. And we learned over the last year, we saw this trend with the use of jamming technology to jam alarm systems. I don't think in my time in the industry and in many people I've spoken to that type of technology had been used before. So we needed to pivot really quickly and figure out how do we adapt our security infrastructure and our security plans to address an emerging threat. Secondly, I would say to really invest in your security solutions. I understand when you're looking at running a business, how important top line expenses are, but really investing appropriately into having the right security solutions, not only just from what's required from your underwriter through your insurance, but what you feel is necessary given the risk of your location or locations. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. Access control is another area that is of great importance of controlling who enters into a store or location and having the ability to manage access control. And then the last 2 I'd say before, and I'm happy to have some more dialogue around these, but is really around continuous alarm readiness and making sure that your alarm system is active, tested regularly, working properly, having the right level of security, whether it be through motion detectors, door contacts, alarm contacts on the safe, and having a plan to make sure that you are constantly managing and monitoring it. And then last but not least is just creating this culture around your location with everybody that works there, from the part-time person that may work one day or one night a week to the people that are there every day, plus ownership around. Just embedding this culture, I think, is critical for driving down losses. And this is things that we've learned not only within Jewelers Mutual, but the industry has learned are tried and true, and we'll continue to push those and provide tools to help jewelers that may not have the resources available to build out these programs. We have them available here free of charge for the industry. So I'll pause for a moment there and certainly have some conversation if there's any follow-up you have, or we could go into the questions, however you want to address our time together.
Yeah, I think, you know what, since we have so many robust questions, and I really mean that, right?
Yeah.
Let's do that, because that's what people want to know about, right? So the first thing is, maybe can you talk about some like the latest trends in the organized retail crime, that things that really specifically impact jewelry?
Sure. I think I mentioned a couple of them, but I'll go a little deeper in those. Like I said, if you recall the trends we saw late last year, even into early this year, around sophisticated burglaries. And we use the word sophisticated not lightly, but because they're a little bit of a different spin on maybe what's happened in the past with regards to sidewall or rooftop entries. Those absolutely are still, unfortunately, prevalent. Matter of fact, we're seeing those happen even in the last 48 hours across the country. The difference that we saw, and a little bit of a different spin on it, is where these bad actors are not only coming in through a vacant side wall that may have a store that is not occupied. We'll talk about solutions for that, but they're coming in utilizing technology, counter technology to ours, to circumvent the alarm system, take the alarm system down using a Wi-Fi cell phone jammer. And if you think about last year, the industry was really working to try to figure out how to mitigate that. Today, I'm happy to say that there's technologies out there that are being introduced that will help a jeweler detect that presence of that jamming device, where a year ago it didn't exist. Today, if you reach out to your alarm provider, go online and read up on these things, those tools are available. The second trend we're seeing, like I mentioned earlier, on the coast, particularly on the West Coast, is involving more of an aggressive behavior around groups of individuals, either, unfortunately, driving. This is in a street front store, driving a vehicle into the front of a store when customers and employees are actually in the building shopping and working. Really, really could be a potentially dangerous situation. This is a trend that we're starting to see. Some of the tools that we would encourage jewelers or retailers to have, working with their landlord, if they have a landlord, is putting in bollards in front of their store to prevent this from happening, working with their law enforcement partners to educate them on these trends, having exterior cameras with potentially somebody monitoring them, even utilizing AI, where you can build in AI that can detect a vehicle that may be outside or inside of the perimeter, to quickly respond in the event that something like this happens during the day. But first and foremost is really about customer and employee safety, and making sure that in the event that this happens, that we have everybody in a safe environment as best we can, and allow for these bad actors do not get into an altercation with them. They're there for one purpose only, and then they're gonna leave very quickly, as they came, typically with a vehicle waiting for them. But to me, that's a trend that is alarming to me and concerning, given the potential for there to be a dangerous situation.
I see. And I know you said you can contact your alarm companies. What technology is there that detects jamming? Is it called something?
Wi-Fi, a jam guard, Wi-Fi jamming detection. What it does, and I know that there's vendors out there that are offering these solutions today. What it does is it detects the presence of a jammer within the proximity of that location. So really, what it does is it gives the alarm. Typically, they're agnostic of alarm vendor, but it gives that alarm vendor comes in as an alarm signal. So it gives the alarm vendor an opportunity to dispatch law enforcement prior to their alarm system being taken down. So these are trends, or not trends, sorry, these are technologies that didn't exist last year that the solution provider community has gone out and developed to help mitigate these types of losses. So what I would tell you is, encourage you to talk to your alarm provider, go online. There are providers out there that offer these solutions, and typically they're very cost effective given what I believe is the tool to mitigate the use of a cell phone and Wi-Fi jammer. Definitely something that I would encourage your members to look into.
Just so you know, you were doing that. So for people on the call who might have some questions, I just Googled Wi-Fi jamming. And you can see I get protection against Wi-Fi jamming, Wi-Fi jammer, detector, let's control it, detecting Wi-Fi jamming. So if you can just go to the Googles, there's plenty of things that you can
and we could, if there's questions that come in, I'm happy to, you provide my email address after, I'm happy to answer those individually as well.
All right. Let's see. So when choosing a physical security solution, or let's assume you have one there now, like let's hope you have one there now. What features, if I'm the jeweler, to say this is the most important, like, is there one you want to prioritize, or is it just kind of like everything needs to be prioritized?
Sure. I think what jewelers should do is what we call a layered security approach. So if you start from the outside, work your way in and think about your facility or your building, think about even what I mentioned around exterior all the way to the sidewalk or wherever your lease line is, whether those are ballards, whether those are other types of security controls, gates that may roll down, gates that may go over your windows, the proper level of glazing over your front windows, and then working your way inside, having controlled entry, buzzer, the ability to manage who comes into your store, all kind of on top of having a really robust camera system, utilizing the current technology, whether it's saved in the cloud, utilizing AI, and then working your way deeper into your store around showcases, having the right security film over your showcases into your back room, and having a robust safe that can, obviously a TLTR 30x6 would be ideal. And then thinking about your back door, and if there's access to the back door, and having the right level of security there. What I would say is having a layered security approach. There's, you could argue, is there one thing better than another? I think in combination or concert of all of them together would really allow for a jeweler to have a robust security infrastructure, leaning into the technology, like I said, as well as what we all know to be kind of tried and true security resources around the proper safe and alarm. Cannot go wrong with that.
Are there any workshops or training that you would recommend to prepare employees? Maybe, especially like, as we go into the holiday season, a lot of times people hire people, right? So, or it's always a good time at the beginning of the season, right? To kind of maybe a Saturday morning rally, right? So is there something like either an online or just something that would be a good training for people?
Yeah, sure. A couple of things on that. One, and this is something that we offer at Jewelers Mutual to anyone, is if you go to our website, jewelersmutual.com, you go into the risk services section, we have training available for anyone that's willing to take it. It's 10 modules. There's a lot of training there. There is also within our website other areas that you can print out, checklists. Jeweler Security Alliance is a great resource, not only for training, but also to get onto their mailing list, become a member, and get their alerts that you can use for really, training in the moment when things happen. They're really quick to get out those types of things. So I would say, whether it's go through our website, go to the Jeweler Security Alliance website, become a member of them, and then also use their alerts as the basis for training. And if you're a JM policyholder, make sure that you have the best email address in the system so you can get our alerts equal. And then what we encourage jewelers to do is to take those kind of real life scenarios that we are pushing out, not only talk about what jewelers or what your team could do, but talk about the situation and have people think about the environment that that they're living in and how those can be applied to those stores. So those are two, in my opinion, free of charge, really just we've done all kind of the heavy lifting for everyone to give them the training they need.
Is there what are some of the most common vulnerabilities that stores have? Like,
Sure.
and I'm not going to, well, okay, no, I will tell you, I was with someone whose store was recently burglarized and a bunch of his Rolexes were taken. I go, were they in the safe? And they were covered. But believe it or not, they weren't the most expensive things in the store, so they weren't in the safe. But, those might have a greater, they might be a little more enticing, right? So what are some of the common things that happen?
Yeah. So some of the things we see, and everything we just talked about around having the right safe, having the right alarms, having the right, a lot of it, boils down to training and education and, really talking to your staff about, well, let me even back up one step further. It's having standards and expectations around what's kept out of safe, what needs to go in the safe, not only what's required from your insurance company, but what makes practical sense of putting into the safe, given the time it takes to do that overnight or at night in the morning when you're pulling it all back out. To me, is understanding your business, having standard work and having whether it's a standard operating procedure for employees to follow, and then using the opportunity to train and to talk about things that are happening with the goal that employees are using good judgment when they see something, they say something, capturing whether it's on video, and capturing those, memorializing. So you have that information, passing that along to law enforcement, mall security, if you're in a mall, so they have the ability or the knowledge that maybe something is happening and they can document it properly and also respond accordingly when there is an incident. So I'd say it is training and getting your employees, particularly as we go into the fall and into the holidays, typically ramp up with more employees, but having a culture around security is important. Driving sales clearly more important, but having a security culture is significantly important. Using tools to train them, creating a mechanism for them to report and save those incidents, and then obviously having standards around, what you expect to be put away at night, how the alarms are being managed and turned on, making sure that they are functioning properly, and your employees in your stores know how to use all the tools available to them. And then just creating that open dialogue between the store staff, ownership, mall security, law enforcement. I think in unison, each of those operating together will help fight this crime that we're dealing with.
All right. So let me ask you, here's a theft, right? We hear of burglaries, right, and robberies, but there's also distraction theft. We see a lot of them. I see them on YouTubes, and they show you like no one's paying attention, blah blah blah. So what are some thoughts on that, and what are some ways we can help mitigate that?
Yeah, it's a good point. Well, I brought up the other two types of crimes. This has not gone away and continues to be there. In with JSA around this is a trend that continues to be there. And one of the learnings I think that we've taken away from these is that these groups are trained, like literally, this is what their full-time job is. And many times you don't know what's happened until you slow the video down, and this is hindsighting it and watching it like, oh, wow, this just happened. So I think first and foremost is from an associate standpoint, this goes back to having standards and having best practices around how many items can be out when you're showing it to a customer, making sure that the showcase is locked, making sure that you have control of that sales situation, assuming that you go into the mindset of I'm going to drive sales in this dialogue with this customer. But by doing that, you're also preventing or hopefully minimizing the risk that is there. Once you lose control of that environment and the customer, or the bad actor in this case, takes control, then I think the opportunity for theft goes up tenfold. So I think it's, education. The videos are there, are great to use as training, but also having standards and holding your teams accountable to those standards. Because many times when we see these events happening and we go back, and whether it's the owner or we here at Jewelers Mutual, we talk to them about it, many times whoever was in that environment did not have control of it. And maybe in some cases, they weren't following what the expectations were. And now they're dealing with a distraction, theft, and loss. So I think having standards, expectations, training, and also education on what to look for in terms of the behaviors, that's super important. And those trainings are available within our website and also within JSA for information.
Great. I think that's really important. Let's see. What about, someone's asking about what two forms? Have you seen, yeah. Someone said they're kind of interested in best practices for double door systems. Is this something that, does the risk outweigh the cost? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So we have some case studies that we've done, in Canada and in other parts of the US, where we've looked at crime in a environment where you can have a kind of a locked door entry where you're buzzing folks in. I think, and let me back up. In those cases where we've deployed it, where the landlord or the mall, or in the case of these in more kind of street front, we've been allowed to do it. We found that it reduces the risk significantly, because what you're doing is now your associates or you have the ability to manage the flow of traffic coming in, as well as determining how many people should be in the store at one time, allowing for that, utilizing, what we don't want to do is lock up the store so nobody can come in that is truly there to shop, but managing access control, what we found has been a significant help in mitigating losses. Obviously, you do not want to control exit, because you want to have people be able to exit the store freely in the event of an emergency, but ingress of having people come in absolutely is a tool and a resource that helps the jeweler manage kind of the flow of people, manage who should come in, how many people at a time. And our case studies in the areas that I mentioned have proven to be valuable, because when we measure the stores that deployed it, it may be even in the same strip mall or in the same mall against ones that hadn't, those losses in the ones that deployed it didn't exist as compared to the ones who did. So you think about it, in your criminal, and you are assessing where you want to besides the inventory selection, but you're deciding where you potentially want to go. You're probably going to go to an area that has least resistance than one that has access control, that is controlling who comes into their store versus an open environment. And we've seen that those statistics prove out to be that way.
What about, can you talk a little bit about cybercrime? I know we didn't talk about that, but it's an issue.
Yeah. Matter of fact, I'm here in our office this weekend and talking with, kind of our information security teams. It is a prevalent issue. Many of the things that we talk about and what I talk about is around crime, but cybercrime is not going away. Matter of fact, I'd argue it's increasing, and being really a couple things on that front. But first and foremost, all the efforts that we talk about around security for your store, security for your employees, preventing crime, equally should be thought about broadly around cybersecurity as well. And what are the controls that a store should deploy as it relates to the potential for, somebody to whether infiltrate is the right word, but to get into a system, the reputational loss, forget about the dollars, that's important, but the reputation. So cybersecurity, in my opinion, should be equally as important discussion. And many of the best practices that we talk about from a crime standpoint, some of those can be applied, having access control, making sure you don't have open USB ports available for someone to plug in, controlling your POS system, looking at tools that you can deploy to control your Wi-Fi, things of that nature, I think are important. And also looking at, what the proper insurance coverage should be for having cyber insurance, because these are things that are kind of behind the scenes happening. Phishing, there's so many aspects to cybersecurity, in my opinion, that we could talk about. As a matter of fact, if I'm not mistaken, October is Cybersecurity Month, and I think where you're going to see a series of webinars similar to this and others from JM and others really talking about the deep dive needed around cybersecurity. So excited for that. But in the meantime, I would do a similar assessment of your cybersecurity controls equally as you're looking at your physical security controls, because many times there's crossover between the two.
Okay. We just actually got a message in from one of our listeners, and I kind of did a little Googling, and saying that Wi-Fi jammers are illegal in many places in the United States. So if they're illegal, how do we do that?
Sorry, the jammers are not legal to have. The actual jamming device.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's not legal for someone to have one. The ability to detect the jamming device through an alarm company is not illegal. So yeah, I'm not encouraging anyone to go out and get a jamming device. That's not. This is a detector that will detect the presence of that illegal device.
Okay, got it. So the device is legal, but the detector is okay.
Correct, and it's been vetted. So yeah, to have a jamming device, you can go online and try to buy them, but you'll probably get flagged, and not something I would encourage anyone to do.
Okay.
Having the ability to detect that device is definitely something that I would encourage people to consider.
Okay, all right. Do you have any suggestions for adding magnetic or automatic door locks to exterior doors?
Yeah, I think that goes back to what we just talked about around
kind
of access control, because that's how you would be able to allow for entry into the store through a remote release of that magnet.
Okay, let me just make a note on that one. Okay, good. Okay, hold on. Coming back here with another question from the gang.
Yeah, no, that's great.
Yeah. Can you give us an example, maybe like of a bad situation, but something the insured or this retailer did to really turn the situation around? And I don't know if that's a vague question, but maybe.
Yeah, no, I get it.
Okay.
There are a lot of success stories out there. Let me put it to you that way. Many times what we talk about is where there's been a major loss or a loss, and whether it's through claims, and we're doing our kind of helping them. But I can tell you about success stories that we've seen in recent days, weeks, where jewelers have heeded the advice that not just us, but that they've been given. And one comes to mind where an overnight burglary was being attempted, and prior to that, the jeweler had a couple things. One, established a really good relationship with their local law enforcement. Two, had the proper level of alarm coverage to detect, they didn't use a jamming device in this case, but to detect something happening overnight. Thirdly, responded to the alarm when they got that phone call from their alarm provider stating that there was an alarm in their store. Because if you recall, over the last couple of years or last year, that became an opportunity. But all three of those things working together allowed for the loss to be mitigated, because law enforcement was able to quickly respond to the store, actually caught the individuals attempting to break into a sidewall, and there was no loss to the store, which is a big win.
Yeah.
The ability for them to do that, which goes back to the original conversation around having a plan and building those relationships and testing your alarms and your response time. So that's a big win, in my opinion, and we love to hear those, and I'm sure they're out there. And then more on a macro level, there's a lot of work being done with law enforcement to work to, catch these bad actors that are doing this at a nationwide level. So that's happening on the back end, but on the front end, those success stories are out there, and I'm excited when they come through our desk, because many times we get them when they weren't a success story, but the ones that are, I think, are the ones that we should be promoting and educating other owners and other policyholders on how to do the same.
Okay. Now I'm going to ask this question. It was submitted by one of our listeners, and my apologies if I'm not asking it right. Just put it into the chat. I'm just repeating what you put in here. If a company has no experience within the security field, how would the Jewelers Mutual training reflect the education around and profiling and action on? So to our listener who wrote that, can you just clarify that for us? Because I'm still a little fuzzy on what that is.
I think I understand the question.
Okay. All right. Perfect.
I think I can respond to it.
Okay.
I think, I don't have an expectation that everyone is a security expert, nor should they be. They should be running their businesses, but it's our job, or my job and my team, to help kind of lead some of these educations and make people a little more knowledgeable around security by doing the things that we're doing here. But also, so on a broad scale, like I mentioned, there's training available for jewelers to go in, utilize free of charge. And then more internally within JM, where we are kind of developing an educational series that we are going to be launching. And it's going to start with new JM policyholders, but we'll expand it potentially to just new jewelers, and educating them literally on the kind of the introduction to security, all the way to how they can then become more advanced and more knowledgeable. I think that's the way I'm understanding the question, is what is available. It's there, it will be there, be on the lookout for that. But more importantly, is just continuing to have these discussions, in my opinion, and ask those questions, and then raise your hand, whether it's through your agent, if you're insured. If not, going through industries like this or industry associations like this to get this level of education. Again, like I said, I don't expect everyone to be a security expert. What would be great if people had a baseline knowledge of what is available and what they should be leaning into as it relates to security. I think that would help them immensely. And then reaching out when there's questions that they may need an answer to through their agent, which could in turn get to us here at JM to be able to help them.
Thank you very much. To that person, I hope that okay. So what is the JM stance on security fog and strobe light kits?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think, I think we're having some continued discussion. I think there's vendors out there that offer solutions that, are tied to alarms overnight. And what I would say is kind of my thoughts around that is to have, if you think about the crimes, like I said, we experienced the last couple of years overnight, having a system in a vault, in a safe room that would mitigate the loss, because you'd be fogging a very controlled area versus an entire store. I think that this is an area that needs to have some further discussion. But I think reaching out to vendors that offer solutions, that work for a jeweler within their store. But the most important thing is that, doing this in partnership with the jurisdiction that store is in will be critical. Because what I would say you don't want to happen, and this is just a comment, is that you want for the fire department or law enforcement to know what this is prior to them showing up when they may not be aware of what a fogging device is, and now they're walking into an environment that is unknown to them. So
Okay.
what I would say is incumbents on the fogging company, whoever that is, to build those, that jurisdictional relationship so they understand that jurisdiction, what it is that's being deployed.
Okay. All right. Would JM recognize the threat and risk matrix score for before and after an in-depth physical and cyber assessment of the company?
Would JM say that question?
Would you recognize the threat, risk, and matrix score for before and after an in-depth physical and cyber assessment of the company? So maybe we could start. What can you tell us what the threat, risk, and matrix score is? Do we know what that is, or?
Well, I would say that, when we're looking at how we write policies, there's risk is top of the line in terms of how we're writing, what premiums are. So it's internal metric we use, but I'm not tracking on the question in full. So I don't know how to respond because I'm not really tracking on the question. Apologies.
Yeah, no, that's okay.
I can take that one. Whoever sent it, if my information is there, yours, we can answer that offline as well.
Okay, that sounds good. Okay, well, I think that pretty much, you've covered a lot of good things, and we're kind of running out of time. But what I want to say to everyone is, if you have a question that maybe, we didn't cover today, that perhaps, even after like the webinar, I should have asked that. Just send us an email. You can send it to me. And my email is super easy. Just members@jewelers.org. Super easy. Just send it to me. I'm Regina. And what I will do is I will get this over to JM and I will get the answer either for you or they will get back to you. So we want to address all your questions. So I hope everyone enjoyed today's webinar. Again, if you have any ideas of something you want to hear about on a webinar, again, members@jewelers.org, just reach out to us and say, hey, I have an idea for a webinar, the vintage jewelry, whatever it might be. We'd love to hear from you. And even if you're not a member of Jewelers of America, we'd love you to be one. And again, members@jewelers.org, and we will get you signed up as a member. So I think that pretty much closes it for today. Thank you again. Jewelers Mutual, you guys are great partners. We all love you in the industry, and along with Jewelers Security Alliance, you guys do a lot of things to help out. Howard, this was fantastic. Thank you again.
No, thanks for the opportunity. I look forward to doing these again with you.
Okay, everyone, have a great day.
All right, thank you all.
Stay safe. Okay, bye.